From the PSIA-AASI Satellite Studios in Hood River, Oregon, I'm George Thomas. You're listening to First Chair, and I'm really excited about this show with you, Brian. We're starting a multi-part series, really of boots on the snow when there actually is no snow anywhere around right now, but there could be by the time we get to the end of this. You had a great idea, and I'm glad we're moving forward with it. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, George, thank you for having me as always. And I think that sometimes summer is the best time to come up with the ideas that are going to help us in the winter because we're not so busy. We're not as busy as we sometimes get and pulled in many directions in the winter. And so, this idea, I think it has some legs and hopefully it carries us into thinking about winter and then obviously into winter itself. And so, yeah, I'm super excited.
And we kind of have a working title that's sort of sounds like a Clint Eastwood movie from the 60s.
Yeah, so I think the working title to start is going to be the good, the great, and the let's maybe not try that again.
I'm trying to envision those characters in that, but okay.
I think the first two might be easy to envision, and the third is going to be an anomaly or to be determined character.
But I think it's a good one for us to address. Again, we're really talking about teaching situations, good teaching, national standards. We're going to be talking about teaching with guests. We're also going to be really talking about clinic situations too.
Yeah, and that's and George, and coming up with this idea, the idea is really that everything we do with our organization is really about the end user being the guest that we get to teach the slide. And a lot of things we do when we go through certification or we go through clinics is working on those skills. And so the beauty of is the certification and the clinics and the trainings that we do just help us get better at ultimately delivering really good teaching to the people that come and want to learn from us. And so we're going to talk the full picture of things that will maybe have happened to you at a certification assessment or might happen to you at a certification assessment, and maybe where it goes well or where it doesn't go well, and really bring it full circle to what does that really mean for our guests, and how do we just create really great experiences and great lessons for our students every day. And so it's really the full spectrum of what we do when we're teaching.
It really starts, I would assume, with good communication, and good communication starts when we're greeting that guest. I don't even mean, going through the pre-lesson meet and greet. It's really when you say hi to that person when they are first walking up for a lesson, that sets the tone.
Yeah, that initial interaction with our guests, that initial moment where we are creating an environment for them and we're creating a space where they are either going to feel welcome or not feel welcome, or they're going to feel that this is what they meets their expectations or it doesn't. Those immediate reactions we have, those fight or flight moments with our student, that can set the stage for everything that's going to come after. And we can make so many decisions in those moments that can really set those students up to have a really easy time trusting us, or to have to really spend a lot of time getting to trust us. And so, yeah, communication is the framework. Without it, it's really hard to do what we do.
And I mean, we can start off with some basic questions or interactions where we can really shut that student down and make them non-communicative just in the way we ask very similar questions of getting to know that person, um, showing them where to go, really getting them kind of in tune with our area where they're going to be put into their class. And we really can get that person in a situation where they don't want to talk. They're nervous already. And we really need to work to bring that out of them so they're open up and willing to listen to us and interact with us.
Yeah, George, you said something that just strikes a chord, right? I see it all the time, and it comes from a place of best intentions. I see instructors that I'm teaching with, and they are super excited to go meet their guest, and they kind of hurry over to start helping the guest, and they start immediately asking questions. Oh, where are you from? Or what brings you here today? Or what are you excited about? And the instructors have such great intentions in those moments, But a lot of times, especially with early on first time style lessons, the guests are so overwhelmed in that moment, they don't even know how to answer a lot of those questions. And where I see the difference is, taking that intention of welcoming the guest and getting to know them and starting to create the ground, level of building rapport with them. When it goes well, it's really a conversation. It's not just a inquisition or a interrogation. It's a conversation where it's dialogue. It's back and forth, and it's two-way, and it's you talking about you and making sure that they know who you are, and then asking questions about them, but not putting them in a situation where you're waiting and waiting and waiting for them to give the answer to a question that they might not have even thought about yet. And so I think a lot of it comes from being in that moment and kind of reading their reactions and reading the conversation and the body language that comes with it and making sure that they don't feel like, oh my God, I wasn't prepared to tell you why I'm here or what I want to learn today. And instead, give them some examples of what they might expect and what some of the things that a lot of your experience to your students come with and recognize, oh, a lot of people that I teach are afraid of falling on day one, and they've heard the horror stories. And what I want to tell you is, if that's something that we're worried about, we can make sure that we take it really easy. And so, like, almost drawing from your experience as an instructor to start the conversation instead of just saying, "Hey, so what are some of the things that you're excited about, and what are some of the things you're afraid of?" That can be such an easier conversation for the student to be part of if you really approach it from a standpoint of you're sharing what your previous experiences are and some of the things that you might expect that they are apprehensive about or excited about, and then let them fill in some of their key buzzwords and moments. But it's such a different experience for them instead of just putting them on the spot and asking very open-ended questions to have that two-way communication. I think that's a huge starting off point.
And not to go into the weeds with this, because it is such an important topic, we've got a group lesson. You've got, let's say, 8 students, and you've got someone who really wants to talk, and you have that person who maybe can easily get overpowered by that person who wants to talk. How do we make it more equal for everyone there? Because, I mean, right off the bat, that person is feeling intimidated who isn't feeling like they're able to talk because someone else is doing so much of the speaking.
Yeah, that's a really good, that's a really good example, and that is very real. And one of the tools I use in my group lessons is, if I identify that, I will make a point to get on the carpet with that person who is maybe quiet during the big group interaction and stand next to them and have that conversation off to the side one-on-one, where they can just fill me in on the details that they maybe weren't able to share in the group setting or the group environment. And really reading those kind of moments of who's really comfortable in their own skin and who's really comfortable being in the spotlight in that group and who's not, and then finding ways to connect with the students in the realm that kind of seems to fit their personality. And so that person who is super out there, outgoing and loud and okay in front of the group, I'm going to be fine probably talking to them and giving them some feedback and challenging them to try some things and doing it in the group setting. And that person who is maybe more reserved, until I get to know them a little bit better, I'm going to try to do that in a more behind the curtain one-on-one situation, or where I can have just a dialogue with them. And so reading all those little moments and starting to make decisions based on those moments. But I think the other key for me is, don't get stuck in those decisions. Those decisions are constantly evolving. And I might think that somebody was quiet at the beginning. And then as I start to interact with them more and get to know them more and see them slide and see how they respond to my coaching, realize that my initial instinct was maybe not on the mark. And so evolving and adapting my style of coaching is super important. And that ties into, you said it's full circle. That ties into demonstrating that when you do an assessment for a certification, it's not just a snapshot moment in time, it's ongoing and it's continually evolving. And that is meant to reflect the real and the real lessons that we teach. And so it's a very cool connection between those.
Brian, one of the things that just popped in my head as you were talking about working with that student was new hire clinics. When we have new instructors coming in and you've got people that are interested to be there and interested in learning how to teach or furthering their own skills. And it's very easy to have that same type of interaction happening where someone is much more expressive, demonstrative, and kind of can take over the group. And we kind of need to be there as clinicians and trainers and people who are doing the hiring to not really herd that person in, but to make it equal.
Hmm. Yeah, to make a space at the table for everybody, right? And to not let that person who is super outgoing and super comfortable in their own skin right out of the gate to overshadow somebody who has a lot to bring to the table, who maybe isn't the first to speak or the loudest in the room. One of my favorite instructors I've ever worked with is a gentleman who's extremely quiet and soft spoken. And I always say that when he actually speaks up, people lean in to hear what he has to say because he is so thoughtful and he doesn't speak nonstop, but when he does, it adds to the conversation, that it contributes in a great way. And so it's one of those, I've talked to him about this, and he'll say, silly things like, well, I have two ears and one mouth and I use them proportionally. And I laugh and I kind of go, okay. And in reality, I just go, no, his personality fits in with, he sits back and he watches and he analyzes and he listens, and then when he sees an opportunity to contribute, he brings it then. And that's just a different personality type, but he's a phenomenal instructor. And if I was to dismiss him as, oh, he's not going to be a great instructor because he's not the first one to be standing up and being the loudest in the room, man, I would have whiffed because he's phenomenal. And so I think that as we look at new hire training, that's another venue where it's really important to connect with what are people's experiences they're bringing and start to figure out what their personality types are and set them up for success, both learning to teach and then also potentially in what, ages and styles of lessons they might be teaching. And it's making sure that they are matched up well, and setups for success is huge in that environment, and not just making assumptions about what makes a good instructor, and alienating people that don't initially show that.
And after we kind of introduced communication and communication skills, I really wanted to get into another thing that you had brought up that you'd like to talk about, which was finding out people's goals.
Yeah.
And how do we really find out someone's goals? I mean, I want to ski better. How do we make them give us something that is really specific? Make them, that sounds kind of forceful, but how can we draw out something that's very specific that that student wants to learn, needs to learn, um, a goal that when they achieve it, they're really going to be feeling some success. And you can't just get that by saying, I want to get better.
Yeah. George, it's how we started tonight. It's having genuine conversations and dialogue with people. And it's something that, I found a lot of success on, and I've trained instructors on, is as you get to know people, don't just talk about skiing and snowboarding. Talk about what they do when they're not skiing and snowboarding, whether that's their first lesson or their 150th lesson. Get to know them as people, and then I talk a lot about, ask the question after the question, right? The first question is, what do you like to do when you're not snowboarding or skiing? And whatever that answer is, as oh, okay, you connect with them and you find out some more, ask more questions about that thing and why that's important to them. Ask why they love to do that thing. Ask why that thing makes them excited, or what that thing means to them, and really listen. And by having some of those conversations, you're gonna figure out things that they love to do in their personal life, and you're gonna hear them speak about those things, and you're probably gonna clue in on things that maybe help you understand why they might find success in the lesson or what their goals might be. And then you continue to have that conversation. So here's an example, I use this one all the time. You say to somebody like, hey, so what's something you love to do? And it can be anything. And I'll use you, George. What's something you love to do other than skiing?
Um, I like working out on the track. I like running intervals.
Okay. And so like what's something about running intervals and running on the track that really just gets you excited? Like when you think about it or when you do it, what's something about it that you love?
I like having specific times that I can work for, and I'm really challenging myself to get my old man running down close to where it was, 50 years ago.
Yeah, right? That's
Let's make it
real.
let's make it 40 years ago because I was faster then than I was 50 years ago.
Perfect. Well, and that's real, right? And just from that mini interaction, I'm hearing things like working towards, being better at performance or having a goal of improving your performance or comparing your performance. I'm hearing this idea of like um, at one point you felt that there was a really high level of performance and you want to get back to that. And so our continued conversation as we slide on snow is going to be comparing how we progress the skills in our lesson and seeing if we can set some goals and we can measure against those goals and see if that starts to really hit home with you on snow, right? And that helps the lesson become fun for you and me because now I'm really making it about how you choose to do something you love to do and connecting skiing with that. And those goals could be goal oriented, or they could be about you could have answered that you love running because you're in a running club and you're the people you run with are some of your favorite humans in the world. And it could be about the relationships that you have in your running club. Or it could just be about working on the perfect form and really understanding performance improvement, like from a learning everything about running and efficiency. And it could be your goals could be tied to performance and relationships and goals or just the thrill of doing something and you could categorize them into all these buckets and it just helps us understand the person. And so I think that this is the question after the question is huge, or the questions after the question are huge to continue the dialogue of understanding our students and understanding what gets them excited about the stuff in their personal lives and helping to see if that can connect into skiing and snowboarding. And if you speak to our normal lessons, great. If you speak to go into a certification assessment, you know, when it talks about identifying goals of your students, it's not like a, hey, what do we want to do today? Oh, you want to make a turn? Great. And then that's it. It's about to connecting with the people and figuring out what they really are passionate about doing that day, and then catering to the individuals and meeting those goals and using skiing as or snowboarding as the vehicle to do that. And so communication and goals are really the foundation of everything that we're going to talk about on this series in terms of getting to know our people so that we can create an experience for them on snow.
And I would like to stay with goals a little bit longer before we wrap up because it's so important that that goal is not vague.
Yeah.
You've
Yeah.
got to get something very specific. And I know I've talked about SMART goals on here before when we were doing the tiny habits discussion, but that specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, timely, something you can achieve in that hour and a half, 3 hours, however you're along with that class. But if you can actually start getting those types of goals out of your students, you're really going to be having people feel some success. And we're going to feel success because we're helping them meet those goals.
Yeah, and you said something really powerful. Those are goals that you agree on with them, and those are goals that are really their goals. And I think a pitfall for instructors is we can go into lessons with our own goals, and we can really fall short of teaching quality lessons when we don't connect with the students and figure out what their goals are and make sure they are measurable and make sure that they are um, something that they actually can understand, work towards, and see progress towards. And they can see that in that short period during the lesson. And they can also measure that outside of the lesson environment when they're out practicing on their own. And so I think that that's really important is that they're not so vague that it's like, oh, okay, so our goal today is just to have fun. Well, guess what? That is a goal, and that is a great goal, but that is going to be a goal that's incorporated with a lot of the things that we're going to do to have fun. And what does fun mean to us? And what does that really mean and relate to skiing and snowboarding? And like when we go to safety, fun, and learning, those are our core values, and those should be our goals every time we go out and slide. But with the individuals we're with, we need to understand what fun means to them and uh, what their definition of fun is going to be on snow, and what their definition of safety is going to be. And what I mean by that is some people are going to be like, you know what, I want to do this. I want to be as safe as possible. I don't want to fall. I don't want to take any spills. I want to just stay on my feet and have a good time. And other people are going to be like, you know what? I really want to get to a certain point in my performance, and I'm okay taking some falls. Through our conversations, our dialogues, we're going to understand those individuals, and we're going to, roll up the knob or roll back the knob to meet those goals in terms of, catering that lesson to them. But yeah, we want to make sure that we don't just keep those goals in our own brain, but we communicate those goals with them and make them part of the goal setting and the goal monitoring and the progress checking on those goals, and make sure they understand what they are and that they're actually their goals and not just our goals as the instructor. That's such a huge and valuable piece.
Now, Brian, you are assessing my horrific snowboard skills, and I'm in an exam with you, exam situation, and I'm doing a teach. Is that something you want to see from me when I'm looking for the goals for that group that I'm teaching toward? Because I've got to find that information out about my group, don't I?
Yeah, and that's 100%. And, that's one of the things that at the assessments, we are, as examiners, we are looking to see how you teach real students, and we're trying to evaluate that. And so it's not a one and done. It's not hey, what do you guys want to do today? Hey, what do you want to learn today? What terrain do you want to go down? And then you never revisit it again. The goal setting at an assessment is really about asking those initial questions and then starting to cater the lesson to match up with some of the answers and the details that you're given in those conversations, and then continually check back to make sure there's understanding, and that people feel challenged and they're working towards those goals, and that they're getting feedback on their performance, how they're accomplishing those goals, and or not accomplishing those, falling short, and having an opportunity to get better. And so this idea of adapting the lesson to the goals of the students is really about understanding where they're coming from, the skill they're bringing to the day, having conversations about how they can improve that skill uh, to accomplish things that they're excited about doing in different parts of the mountain, in different terrain zones of the mountain, and then creating an environment where you let them practice and you're there to coach and give them feedback and guidance to help them understand their own performance and how they can get their performance to improve, or to be more consistent, or to just be more fun in that zone of the mountain and more confident. And so, yeah, this idea of goal setting at assessments, it's not a box that you check just by asking, hey, what do you folks want to work on today? It's a evaluation of your ongoing ability to monitor what people are doing, how successful they're being with it, the information that they're giving you about what they're bringing in terms of their experience level to that day, how they're performing in the activities that you're setting up as the teacher at an assessment, and then how you're kind of creating a lesson environment that would reflect what you do with real students. And so don't think of it as one and done. I'm going to ask a question at the beginning of my teach, and I'm never going to do it again. It's You're going to start a teach potentially by having some conversations and asking some questions, and then you're going to get people moving, and that movement that you do with them should relate to some of the details that you're getting in those conversations. And then you're not going to forget about all that information and just do whatever you wanted to do. You're going to involve and include all the information you're gathering into the teaching segment so that it's really about those people and their journey, where they're at and where they're going. And so that's like a big overview of where I see some folks fall short in assessments. Is they think of it as, I just got to ask the question and then I got to teach a progression, and they don't realize that all of the dialogue and the conversations is really just information gathering and fact finding about your students, and the important piece is what you do with those details and how you make the teaching segment about the details and the people. And so that's a really big takeaway. And I guarantee most of us do that really well with our real students. And what we need to be better at is demonstrating what we do and how we do that with our real students at our assessments.
What you've got me thinking now. I really enjoy chatting with you, Brian. And again, I don't want to ask a question that is too out there and maybe gets people wondering, but you're making me think, going into the teach, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm on a limited time. I've got to get this and this. My teach is actually starting, I'm thinking, when that assessment starts and I'm meeting everybody. And we're going to fake like I can snowboard. But, Brian, I noticed in this assessment earlier on, you were asking about this. And is that something we could work on as we're going into my teach? Is that something instead of then having to go through a lot of question and answer with you and taking up time there, because I'm aware of the surroundings and paying attention to what's going on with everyone in the group, can I start to pick up on some of those things and bring that into my teach?
George, that's real. Like I love that. And I think that, yes, the answer is a resounding yes, is that um, think of any environment if we had a couple hours to spend with people and we had these moments where we're in isolation on a chairlift talking and not sliding and you have these conversations. If I turned my ears off for that entire part of the day and don't have any of those conversations and learn about people, it's going to make my job so much harder when it's my turn to teach. And instead, having those moments and listening and again hearing what people are bringing to the table and hearing the questions they ask and the style of questions they ask, or starting to assess people's learning styles and their whether they're just a go-getter and they're that first person in line to try something all day, or they're that person who's kind of asking some questions and understanding the nuts and bolts before they're jumping up to give their shot at trying it. Starting to assess and understand the people, have dialogues and conversations with the other participants in our assessment, and be real and genuine about it. That is going to set you up so well to be successful because you're able to draw from real experience like you would if you just had an extra couple hours with your students who you're teaching at your mountain for the day. If you just magically got to be teleported to their condo or their hotel and you got to eat breakfast with them and then you got to walk or ride to the base area with them and walk their gear in and check in and you got to spend like an hour in the morning with your students before your lesson began, I guarantee you'd be a much more effective instructor because you'd know about the people. And so what you're describing is just an opportunity to get to know people that you can use and utilize, not use, but really utilize and lean on when it's your opportunity to teach at an assessment. And so I highly encourage that. But I will say be genuine about it. Don't go into it with like your notebook out going, all right, I need to find out George's learning style and I need to find out his preferred way to do this, this, and this, because that's not going to feel like it's about the student. That's going to feel like it's about you as the person who's trying to game the system or game the assessment. What I'd say is just use it as an opportunity, like you had an extra hour built into the part of your lesson that starts when you meet the people as they come out of the rental shop or they come up to the lesson lineup area. Use it as you just built in an extra hour to buffer to get to know them and then lean on that and continue the dialogues into your teaching segments. And I guarantee it's going to be easier for you to have answers and have a direction and have a focus because you've been listening and you've been starting to create an understanding of the people. And so I love what you're describing, and I would 100% wholeheartedly encourage people to be genuine about doing that and then use that. I'll give you a real moment. Be honest, if it's your teaching segment at the assessment and you learn this great fact about George about, some of the running he's been doing and some of the focus he has on getting some of his times down and we had this conversation on the lift, and then I'm going to talk about that during my teaching segment at an assessment. Make sure that you reference that so the examiner, who probably wasn't there for that conversation, understands that you're just not making up this random fact about George, but it's actually something that you connected on and you've listened to and you've kind of asked some questions and dived a little deep into. And so make sure you kind of bring it up in the light of, hey, George, remember earlier when we were talking about running. Can you kind of, when you were talking about kind of going back, getting in the time machine to 40 years ago, what are some of the goals you have today based on what you've done over the last, couple decades? And just share with the group that information. And that kind of brings to light some of the details that I've, gathered throughout the day. And it helps the rest of the group feel part of that experience, but it's not like having that conversation over again, if that makes sense.
Brian, anything you'd like to add to lead us into our next part of this multi-part series in conclusion?
Yeah, I just say this is going to be a really fun journey, and George and I talking about this journey is going to come at you in a bunch of different directions. We're going to do a series here, with first chair. There's going to be some opportunities with 32 degrees. The whole focus is on drawing from experience as an examiner and seeing when people come to assessments and they do things and they just knock it completely out of the park, or they do something and you're like, oh, that was really good, or they take a shot and they try something and it didn't pan out maybe the way that it could have. And this whole series is going to be on kind of pulling back that curtain and analyzing what can we do better to really knock it out of the park more frequently at our assessments. And then again, to bring that full circle to really knock it out of the park more often in our lessons with our students. And so we're going to talk real. We're going to talk things that I've seen as an examiner or as an instructor or as a trainer. And it's going to be dialogues about how we can all get better at doing what we love to do, is teaching our students, and how can we demonstrate that and show that when we take that journey into certification if we do. And so I would highly encourage this to be a dialogue between us and all the listeners. And what are some areas that we can help you understand about the assessment, teaching, or people, or technical? And as we develop this, how can you reflect on what we're talking about and put it into your everyday lessons and make the best experience for the people you're sliding with? That would be the journey I kind of want to pave the way for. Is I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to take some twists and turns, and I'm really excited to do it with you, George.
Looking forward to it, Brian. Brian Donovan joining us on the first chair. Thanks very much.
Thank you, George.
From the PSIA-AASI Satellite Studios in Hood River, Oregon, I'm George Thomas.